Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're taking a look at the connection between bats, viruses, and human health. And we always come prepared with some awesome sources, and this time is no different. All this information today is coming straight from HealthWise, a segment of Project Plain Talk. Let me tell you, getting ready for this deep dive has been quite a ride.
Well, it's a topic that's definitely often oversimplified, so I'm really glad we're going to do a nice deep dive here.
I know, right? Like, it's so easy to just think bats are scary, but there's just so much more to it. Like, for example, did you know that some bats can live for over 40 years?
Yeah, over 40 years, that's right. And that crazy long lifespan, combined with their immune system, makes them the perfect host for just a ton of viruses.
Okay, see, now that's what I find really interesting. I mean, we all know that bats are the only mammals that can actually fly. But this whole virus thing is like a whole other layer of complexity. They can host all these viruses that are dangerous of us humans, but they don't even get sick. It's kind of like they're these little flying fortresses of immunity. What's their secret?
Well, their immune systems are something else. They're truly remarkable, and it's very likely a result of just how much energy they need to fly. I mean, think about it. They've evolved to deal with the stress and damage that comes with flying, and that seems to have given them like this crazy edge in handling viruses, too.
So they adapted to not just survive, but thrive in this high-stakes environment. And that, of course, changes how they interact with viruses. I mean, that makes sense. But it still makes you wonder, if they're not getting sick, why should we even be worried?
Well, because even though bats can handle these viruses, they can still spread them to other animals and humans, which is something we call spillover. And you're probably familiar with the concept of zoonotic diseases. This is really where the risk to human health comes in.
Yeah, zoonotic diseases, those are illnesses that jump from animals to humans. And it's not just like a couple random viruses, right? It's like the heavy hitters, SARS, MERS, Ebola, Nipah, Hendra, Marburg.
Yeah, it's a pretty long list, and each of those viruses has its own crazy story of how it jumped from bats to us.
And often there's like another host in between, right? Like with SARS, it was civet cats. With MERS, it was camels. So it's not even just about avoiding bats. It's about this complex chain of transmission.
Exactly. It's about the bigger picture and how we're all interconnected, us and all these different species.
Speaking of interconnectedness, I was reading about a village in Tamil Nadu in India. The people there don't light firecrackers for Diwali to protect the local bat colonies, which is pretty amazing. I mean, a whole community choosing to protect bats. It suggests a different kind of relationship, right?
It's a really cool example of how our culture and conservation can be connected. And this community clearly sees the value of bats. Maybe it's their role in things like insect control or pollination.
It really makes you think twice about the whole us versus them narrative. And it makes you wonder if there are other communities out there that have figured out how to live with bats without having these huge outbreaks. What creates that kind of balance?
That's a great question and something researchers are really looking into. There's evidence suggesting that some communities, especially those that have lived with bats for a long time, might have developed some resistance or tolerance to certain bat viruses.
So it's not just about the bats themselves, it's about the interplay between us, our culture, and the environment. It's like a delicate dance, trying to coexist without setting off these spillover events.
It really is a delicate balance, and it's getting even harder to maintain because of how much we're impacting bat habitats.
It's true. It's not like bats are out to get us. We're the ones disrupting their ecosystems, pushing them closer and closer to humans and other animals.
Right. Deforestation, habitat loss, and the wildlife trade are putting a lot of pressure on bats. And when they're stressed, they shed more virus. That makes them more likely to spread viruses to other animals, including us.
It's like we're poking the bear, or I guess poking the bat, and then acting all surprised when it bites back. The Nipah virus outbreak is a good example of that, isn't it?
It is. Deforestation and drought in Malaysia forced fruit bats, which is where Nipah virus naturally lives, to find food closer to where people lived. This brought them close to pig farms, and the virus jumped from bats to pigs, and then from pigs to people.
It's a tough reminder that our actions have consequences. Not just for us, but for the whole ecosystem.
It really shows how connected human, animal, and environmental health are, is what we call the One Health concept. To stop outbreaks in the future, we need to understand the root causes, not just treat the symptoms.
One Health is so important, but it also seems really big. Where do we even start?
Well, it starts at understanding. We need to know more about bats, how they live, how they act, and the viruses they carry. We need better systems to catch outbreaks early, and we have to find ways to change the things we do that increase the risk of spillover.
So it's not just about studying bats, it's about how they fit into their environment and how we fit in with them. It's a puzzle with a lot of pieces.
That's it, exactly. And a big part of that puzzle is realizing that bats aren't our enemies. They're incredibly important to our ecosystems.
So true. It's easy to forget that they're not just disease carriers. They're pollinators, they spread seeds, they control pests. They're vital for a healthy planet.
Absolutely. They're crucial for biodiversity and balance in nature.
So how can we protect ourselves from the risks, but also make sure bats are protected? It's a tough balance, isn't it?
It is delicate, and it needs a multi-pronged approach. We need to promote responsible land use, reduce deforestation, regulate the wildlife trade, and invest in research for vaccines and treatments for bat-borne diseases.
It sounds like we need a total change in how we think. We can't just see bats as tests or threats. We need to see their value and find ways to peacefully coexist.
I agree. It's about respecting their role and understanding that how we act affects them, and in the end, it affects us too. And it's not just like the big ones you hear about on the news, like Nipah. Bats are connected to all sorts of zoonotic diseases, even the scary ones that cause hemorrhagic fevers like Ebola and Marburg.
Ooh, yeah, those are some serious diseases I definitely wouldn't want to mess with. What do we know about how those viruses jump from bats to us?
Well, the exact way it happens is still being researched, but one thing is for sure, it seems like contact with bats that have the virus or even just their bodily fluids is a big factor. For example, in some cultures, people hunt bats for food, and that close contact can lead to exposure. Or sometimes it can even be something as simple as coming into contact with bat guano in caves.
Guano. Isn't that just a fancy word for bat poop?
It is, and while it's a potential source of viruses, it's also really valuable fertilizer in some parts of the world. Some cultures even use it in traditional medicine.
Okay, I think I'll stick to the stuff I get at the store. But seriously, though, if bats are connected to all these dangerous viruses, why don't we just, get rid of them?
I hear that question a lot, but getting rid of all the bats just isn't a real solution. First of all, it's just not possible to do on a large scale. And even if we could, it wouldn't mean that zoonotic diseases would just disappear. There are tons of other animals out there with viruses that could jump to humans.
That's true. Plus, we've already talked about how important bats are to the whole ecosystem. They're not just spreading diseases, they pollinate, they spread seeds, they keep pests under control. They're super important for keeping nature balanced.
Exactly. So instead of trying to wipe them out, we should focus on understanding them better and finding ways to live alongside them safely.
And that means things like investing in research, promoting responsible land use, and educating people about the risks and how to minimize them.
Right. It all comes back to the One Health idea. We're all connected, humans, animals, and the environment. We can't just focus on one without considering the others.